When I first scanned myself in 1991, it wasn't good. And just the week before, I'd scanned my 60-year-old mother, and she had a gorgeous brain. And so I created brain envy. I wanted her brain. So here I am, I'm a double board certified psychiatrist. So for people who don't know what that means, so I'm a general psychiatrist and I have a specialty in kids. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm a physician. I'm highly educated and I don't care at all about my own brain, right? I love watching football on Sunday and when I saw my brain, I'm like, ouch. This can be better. And so how do you make it better? Well, the second thing is you avoid anything that hurts it. And I have a mnemonic we can talk about called Bright Minds. It's, if you want to keep your brain healthy, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. So brain envy, gotta care, avoid things that hurt it, do things that help it. And so what have we learned? That exercise boosts blood flow to the brain. Not believing every stupid thing you think calms the anxiety centers in the brain. Things like omega-3 fatty acids get your gut right because your gut makes most of the neurotransmitters in your body. Well, the little tiny habit for brain health is before you go to make any decision, you ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you love yourself, because it's never about should. As soon as you think you should do something, you won't do it. Just because we're all 4 years old in our head and rebellious. It's, you answer the question in a positive way because you love yourself. Because you love yourself, your wife, your life, your mission. That's why you do the right thing. Because too often people go, oh, well, I can't have this and I can't have that. And as soon as you get into that deprivation mindset, it's not going to work.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Dr. Daniel Amen, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, watch your weight.
Tech companies continue to create addictive gadgets that steal our attention and distract us from our loved ones. Microsoft just published a study that said the human attention span is now 8 seconds. A goldfish is 9 seconds. This is evolution going the wrong way. A study in the Harvard Business Review said that only 10% of managers have both focus and energy. It's a war. And the war has consequences. Your bad habits have consequences. We know Alzheimer's disease is expected to quadruple in the next 35 years. There is no cure for it on the horizon, and 50% of people 85 and older will be diagnosed with it. And the really bad news, what we now know based on imaging, it starts in your brain literally decades before you have any symptoms. So this 59-year-old woman I diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, these are SPECT scans, it's the imaging studies we do at our clinics around the United States. The image on the left is a healthy scan, the image on the right is a 59-year-old woman who has Alzheimer's disease. Odds are she had negative changes in her brain in her 20s. So those of you that are waiting to get sick before you get serious about being well, you want to rethink that. In addition, depression has gone up 400% since 1987, and it is one of the major risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, as is diabetes. Brand new study showed that 50% of the United States, and this is because of the food we eat, We are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And diabetes damages every organ in your body. It's not just a blood sugar problem. It turns out to be a blood vessel problem, and any organ that's deprived of blood flow is damaged. And then, as I mentioned, I published 2 studies that said as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. And with 2/3 of Americans overweight, 1/3 of us obese, it is the biggest brain drain in the history of the United States. In fact, it's now considered a national security crisis because 70% of people who try to sign up for the military are rejected, and the #1 reason is weight problems.
Rule number 3, practice diaphragmatic breathing.
Is it the pandemic, or were you anxious before all this happened? Anxiety disorders are the #1 common cause, the #1 cause of mental health issues. After an anxiety episode, people, they're just worn out because it's taken so many energy from them. Okay, so what to do? And I have taught you on these live chats how to do diaphragmatic breathing, but it's this one pattern. If you just do it 10 times, a couple of times a day, less than 2 minutes each, take a big breath, 3 seconds in, and hold it for a second. And then take 6 seconds to breathe out. And then hold it out for a second. And then repeat that 10 times, less than 2 minutes. It triggers the opposite of a sympathetic fight or flight response. It triggers something called a parasympathetic response. You do that 10 times, you will feel so much better. And then as you're breathing, I want you to think about what you're really thinking about. I call them ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. These are the thoughts that come into your brain automatically and ruin your day. Automatic negative thoughts, ANTs. During a pandemic, you get infested. And the ants link, stack, and then they attack. And while you're breathing, I just want you to what am I thinking about? And then when you're done, write them down. And then kill them. You have to develop an internal anteater.
Rule number 4, take on your brain early.
Here are 2 SPECT scans, healthy on the left. So SPECT looks at blood flow and activity, looks at how your brain works. MRI and CT, they look at structure, SPECT, PET, functional MRI, quantitative EEG, they look at function. And quite frankly, most mental health issues are functional, they're not structural. Here's someone who had a stroke. Now, she actually came to the hospital because she was depressed, and her neurological exam was normal, but you can see 1/4 of her brain is missing, it's dying. This is what Alzheimer's disease looks like. You can see where the back half of the brain is deteriorating. And the scary thing about Alzheimer's is it starts in your brain decades before you have any symptoms. So those of you that are young, that are sort of waiting till you're older to get healthy, you might want to rethink that because you don't want your brain deteriorating at any age.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, question your thoughts.
Whenever I see someone, so if you came to see me, I'm always thinking about the 4 circles of your life. So I'm thinking about your biology. So with anxiety, my first thought is areas in your emotional brain just are working too hard. And so it's driving that anxiety. So what's the biology? What's the psychology, which is how do you think and the environment that you grew up in? What's the social circle? Because if you're around a lot of irritated, angry, negative people, you're more likely to be anxious. And what's the spiritual circle? Why do you care? Why you're on the planet? What's your deepest sense of meaning and purpose? So I'm always thinking bio, psycho, social, spiritual. And that way I end up helping whole people, not just, oh, you're anxious, take Xanax, because that's the quick answer. That if you go to Kaiser, for example, and I just hired a doctor from Kaiser and he saw 25 patients a day. So the 25 patient a day answer is Xanax, is let me give you a benzo. And the problem with it is once you start it, it's insidious. It changes your brain to need it in order to feel normal. And so I'm like, so how else can we quell your anxiety? So there's some simple supplements like GABA, or one of my favorites, magnesium, that can be really helpful. But the psychological one, there was one day I was at work and I saw 4 suicidal patients, and that's hard for me. And then I saw 2 couples who hated each other, and 2 teenagers who ran away from home. And so at the end of the day, I was worn out, and I came home to an ant infestation in my house. And I'm cleaning up thousands of ants, and I'm like, and then it just hit me, ant, automatic negative thoughts. My patients are infested. And the next day, I went to work with a can of ant spray. And I put it on my coffee table. And I'm like, we need to help you get rid of these things that are infesting your mind. And they liked that. It was just something they could grab onto. So here's the exercise. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, I just want you to write down what you're thinking. And ask yourself if it's true. Pick a thought, any thought you want to share, and I'll teach you how to put a stake in it.
This is never going to work.
Okay? So here are the 5 questions. Is it true?
It certainly could be true, yeah.
But is it true?
I can't say definitively.
I don't know.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I am not a fan of positive thinking. I am not.
Interesting.
Positive thinking kills way too many people. I'm a fan of accurate
What do you mean it
thinking.
kills too many people? What do you mean?
So they did a study at Stanford, 1921, on 1,548 10-year-old children. And they followed them for 90 years, looking at what goes with success, health, and longevity. And it wasn't the don't worry kids. It wasn't the happy kids. In fact, the don't worry, be happy kids died the earliest from accidents and preventable illnesses. The kids who lived the longest were the conscientious kids. The kids who said they were going to show up at a certain time and they show up on time. The kids who got their homework done. The kids who were responsible, who actually had a bit of anxiety, because anxiety prevents you from driving at 125 miles an hour down the freeway in the rain, right? You need some anxiety. Obviously, too much, it makes people suffer. So this isn't going to work out. Is it true? I don't know. The second question is, can you absolutely know with 100% certainty it's not going to work out?
No.
No. Third question, how do you feel when you believe the thought it's not going to work out?
Bad. Anxious. Do you feel uncomfortable, impending doom, this sense that, it's overwhelming, you don't want to look at it, you want to turn away, you want to go do things that are fun, that are just easy, immediate gratification, eating the marshmallow immediately. It's sort of all at a limbic level, it's just emotion.
And then how do you treat other people when you believe the thought?
If I were to give into it, you're going to be grumpier, grouchier, shorter with people, or just sullen and quiet.
Yeah, so is it true? I don't know. Can I absolutely know that it's true? No. How do I feel when I believe the thought, anxious? Worse, it's fueling the thing that makes you naturally upset. Fourth question is, who would you be or how would you feel if you didn't have the thought? If you couldn't have the thought?
Certainly better, for sure.
Killing the ants it's a biological treatment too, because when you believe these negative thoughts, it changes your physiology immediately. So how would you feel if you didn't have the thought? Better, you said. So the fifth question is my favorite question. It's you take the original thought, this will not work out, and you flip it to the opposite, to the exact opposite, not the narcissistic opposite, which is I will be the best ever. So the opposite of it, this will work out. Do you have any evidence that that's true? If you're thinking about, whatever the situation, then it won't work out.
Historical performance, sure.
Just like once in your life or more than once?
Depending on what we're talking about, no, it could be years of success at something.
Right. Somebody on my board just this morning, I'm dumb. And then when we switched it to I'm not dumb, she had like 50 reasons why she wasn't dumb, right? But if you don't challenge your thoughts, if you don't question your thoughts, you believe them 100%, and then you act out of the belief. So learning how to clean that up is really important. But sometimes there are remnants of anxiety that are not driven by the negative thoughts, and their diaphragmatic breathing is so important.
Rule number 6, get a brain scan.
In 1991, I started to do this study called brain SPECT imaging. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. So here's an example of a healthy scan. Compare it to someone who was a drug addict. The real reason not to use drugs, they damage your brain. When I saw these scans, they were so awful, I took them home to my 4 children and effectively induced anxiety disorders in all 4 of them when it came to drug abuse. And then I thought, well, I should scan myself. And when I scanned myself at the age of 37, it looked terrible. I'm like, why does my brain look so bad? And I played football in high school. And I had meningitis as a young soldier, and I wasn't sleeping, and I had a lot of bad brain habits. And when I saw my brain, I think everything I've done in my life since then was to make it better. And 20 years later, my brain is fuller, fatter, happier. And the reason is, so when I saw my scan the first time, I developed a concept I call brain envy. See, I'm a psychiatrist by training, and so I had to read Freud. And Freud had this concept of penis envy. And, but he was wrong. He was about 2.5 feet too low in the body. What you really need to care about is the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. And so, as I developed brain envy, I developed this program to do everything I could to have a better brain and a better life. And in fact, I'm so obsessed with it that I got divorced in 2000, and I told myself if I ever got married again, I'm gonna scan, the most important part of this woman's body I wanna see is her brain. So when I met my wife almost 12 years ago, about 2 weeks into our relationship, she's really cute, she's really smart, I really liked her, and I said, you haven't seen the clinic yet. So she came, she agreed to get scanned, put her in the camera. She had a great brain. So I married her, and it's worked out really well. And the rule in my house is if you date one of my children, for more than 4 months, you have to get scanned. You haven't seen the clinic yet. Don't you want to see the clinic? And so my son-in-laws both have been scanned, and they got to stay and procreate. So the imaging tells us if a brain is healthy, if it's aging too fast, if you have something like Alzheimer's disease brewing in your brain, if it's been injured, if it works too hard or not hard enough. And ultimately, how do you know unless you look? So I've been trying to change the profession by, psychiatry by, come on, you have to look. If you don't look, you don't know. Stop lying about it. Imaging actually completely changed the discussion around mental health for me. I learned no one wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as defective or abnormal, but everybody wants a better brain. Imaging is really important.
Rule number 7, be aware of negative thoughts.
When people focus on negativity, their memory goes to hell.
Oh,
Isn't that
that's scary.
interesting? So if you focus on what you love about your life, your brain actually works better.
Wait, I can't
than
watch
if you
the news
focus,
anymore?
Oh my goodness.
I can't
This is
scream
like
at the
a
TV
whole
in the
issue
morning.
between us. And the news, I call CNN the crisis news network. They know that people pay attention to fearful thoughts
then I'll just watch
more
Fox.
than they pay attention to healthy thoughts or happy thoughts, because our brain, because of evolution, is wired to pay attention to what might hurt you, what might scare you. And the news actually knows that. And so you will see 9 out of 10 stories to be awful and negative, and somebody's
That's how they
being
get their ratings.
beheaded and so on. So, but if you keep that on and you keep focused on those negative thoughts, you're going to be anxious, stressed, and depressed.
Rule number 8, admit you have a problem.
1994, the NFL formed its concussion committee. But they never sponsored a brain imaging study on players. Instead, they studied rats. They put little tiny helmets on rats. And they whacked them in the head repeatedly with these 50 to 100 gram pellets. Boom, boom, boom. And then they would throw them down laundry chutes. I mean, they were just brutal. And Roger Goodell was in front of Congress in 2009. He said the NFL didn't know if playing football caused long-term brain damage. They were studying the issue. So not really, they were kidding. When he said that, Maxine Waters, the congresswoman from Los Angeles, said, Commissioner, acting like you're studying traumatic brain injury in football is a conflict of interest. You're like the tobacco companies saying you're studying lung cancer. And the problem with the NFL's position is if you don't admit you have a problem, you can't do anything to solve it. I've known that as a psychiatrist for a long time. If you have a problem with drugs or alcohol or your temper and you don't admit you have that problem, you're not going to fix it, right? The first thing you have to do is admit you have a problem.
Rule number 9, protect your brain.
The cerebellum, I think of it as the Rodney Dangerfield part of the brain. It gets no respect, even though it's 10% of the brain's volume, but has 50% of the brain's neurons. Can you imagine something that has half the brain's neurons actually gets very little coverage in the scientific media?
And so what is the cerebellum doing? Is it to do with coordination? And
Well, that's what they used to think. Yeah, coordination, movement. But now we know 80% of it is dedicated to cognition and emotion. So a racket sport, if your wife likes ballroom dancing, become good at it because it's a coordination exercise. And then you want to stimulate it. And there's certain supplements that I actually like theanine, because it helps you feel relaxed, but it really also helps you focus.
And this is over the counter?
Rhodiola, ashwagandha, ginseng. We actually make something we like called focus and energy, and we find it stimulates your frontal lobes and your cerebellum at the same time. And then stop hurting it. Alcohol is directly toxic to the cerebellum. I mean, that's why they make you try to walk a straight line, and you can't because your cerebellum's not working. It's being poisoned. So if you're playing football, or your kids playing football, what they're doing is they're banging their frontal lobes. And there's actually this really cool term I like. It's called cross-cerebellar diaskesis. It's like, whoa. What does that mean? If you hurt your left frontal lobe, it actually turns off your right cerebellum. And if you hurt your right frontal lobe, it turns off the left cerebellum. And if you're heading soccer balls, you're turning off both sides of your cerebellum. So we just have to do so much better at protecting the brain.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have fun.
I just remember how happy I was on the way to church with my wife and daughter. And when we got there, I told Tana, my wife, they said, why don't you drop Chloe off at Children's Church? I'll go save us seats. And as I walked toward the sanctuary, I saw hundreds of donuts for sale for charity. And it really irritated me. Because there's not one healthy thing about donuts. And then right around the corner, there was bacon and sausage cooking on the grill. And my brain is like, seriously. And right before I walked into the sanctuary, it's a huge church in Newport Beach, California, where I live. They're cooking hundreds of hot dogs for after church. And now I'm furious. Because I begin to see I'm going to church to get my soul fed. These bastards are trying to kill me. And then as I sat down, the minister started talking about the ice cream festival they had the night before. And now I'm psychotic. I'm so angry that when my wife finds me in church, I'm typing on my phone, and she hates this thing. She thinks of it as the other woman. And she gave me that look, you know, that only your wife can give you, like, why the hell are you on that thing in church? Don't you know you're going to hell? And so I showed her what I was typing. Go to church and get donuts, bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. They have no idea they are sending people to heaven early. Save them, then kill them. This is not the plan. And that Sunday, I have no idea what the minister said. I prayed that God would use me to change the culture of food at church. And you'll see throughout this 20 minutes together, I have an attitude problem. And during the prayer, I'm like, this is just the dumbest prayer you've ever prayed. How would that ever happen? You're a psychiatrist, you do imaging, you're trying to change your profession by actually adding medical information rather than diagnosing, you know, mental health issues based on symptom clusters. That sounds stupid. But during the prayer, I just talked back to my attitudinal self and I said, I don't care, it's my prayer. This is wrong. And so what I want to tell you is intention matters. 2 weeks later, no lie, it's exactly how it happened. Pastor Rick Warren from Saddleback Church called me and he said, Dr. Amen, I'm fat. My church is fat. Will you help me? And I'm like, you had me from hello. Together with my friend Mark Hyman, we created a health program for Saddleback Church called the Daniel Plan. It's a church-based healthcare initiative based on 5 pillars: faith, why do you care, food, fitness, focus, which we'll talk about today, which is brain health, and friends. You get sick together, just as you saw at church, or you get better together.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch a video and just get motivated, the science says you have a 35% chance of actually following through on your goals. That's not good enough. No, not for you, Believe Nation. We gotta do something. But when you write it down and you create a specific plan of action for the next week, that number jumps to 91% chance of you following through. And when you commit to somebody else, like leaving a comment on this video, it jumps to 95%. You need to follow through on your goals. So what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your specific plan of action for the next week? Put it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
Some people call CNN the crisis news network because what they're doing is they're doing headlines to make you pay attention, which is not good for you. It is wearing out your adrenal glands. They produce stress hormones. Pornography is the same way. Actually, studies have shown it shrinks your frontal lobes. You know, what you bring in helps determine how your brain works. And so if you're watching the same sort of television shows all the time and you're not learning anything new, or you're on the internet doing the same things, that's not good for your brain. The more you use it, the more you can use it.
If you want 10 more amazing rules from Dr. Moran Surf, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
The brain adapts and starts to operate devices on the outside world. My mistake was to say it was impossible before I was sure about it. So I should have said, we don't know yet, we didn't do it yet, but we should investigate.